Welcome back, dear students. Today we are going to study the fifth lecture on cases of noun. In the previous four videos we studied four cases. Today we are going to study the fifth one, and this case is called dative case. Listen carefully. In this video we are going to study direct object and indirect object, and we are going to study affected object and non-affected object. So make sure that you watch complete video till end so that you get all the information on case number 5 of noun as well as on object. And it's very important for all those students who have difficulties with objects, so they will learn object and direct object and indirect object, which are two types of object. So let's get started. The case number 5, dative case. In this case, a noun is used as the indirect object of verb. Simply you can say that we have two objects. The first one is direct object and the second one is indirect object. So in this case, object will be functioning as an indirect object of the verb, right? And this case is also called as an indirect object of verb case. Now, example is given: Martin Luther King donated the sculpture to the museum. Martin Luther King is our subject, donated is the verb, and the sculpture is the direct object. Now, in this case, this object is directly affected by the action of main verb, and museum is going to receive the direct object. So, the object which is affected directly by the action of main verb is called direct object, and the object which receives direct object is called indirect object. Now, direct object is most often a name of thing, and indirect object is most often a name of person. But as I told you that most often, so in rare cases that can also be a name of thing. Now, museum, it's not a person, right? It's a name of place. Example number 2, he sent a letter to Hamid. In this example, sent is our verb, letter is the direct object. The word sent or the verb sent affects letter, and letter is our direct object because it's directly affected by the action of verb, and Hamid is our indirect object because it receives direct object, right? Now, I hope you understood that this case of noun is called dative case. In both cases, in both examples, you see that the indirect object functions as dative case. We call it dative case in grammar, right? Museum is a noun, it's a common noun, and the function of this noun is dative case in the example because it's used as the indirect object of verb. The direct object is sculpture and the indirect object is museum. In the second example, he sent a letter to Hamid. So Hamid is our indirect object. In this case of noun, Hamid is a proper noun. It functions as dative case, right, of noun. We have the fifth case, dative case, and indirect object whenever it's used after direct object or before direct object, that is called dative case of noun. So now we have the question, what is object? So whenever someone asks you this question, normally we have difficulties with understanding of object. Object is a noun, pronoun, or a noun phrase. It can be a noun, pronoun, or a noun phrase, and which is affected by the action of main verb. Noun, pronoun, or noun phrase which is affected by the action of main verb is called an object. Now, as I told you, it can be a noun, it can be a pronoun, and it can be a noun phrase. So we have three types of grammatical terms which can be an object. Now, another definition for object that is very simple: the receiver of an action is object. The receiver of an action is called object. Now, look at the example. Ahmad broke the glass. Ahmad broke the glass. So broke, that is second form of break. That's the action which we have here called verb, and glass is our object, that is the direct object. So object here that is affected directly by the action of verb, and it functions as an object. As I told you, know that object is affected by the action of main verb. So in this example, the word noun functions as an object and it is affected by the action of main verb, right? Now, Ahmad broke what? The glass. So glass received the action, right? Glass received the action. He fell down the glass, or he threw the glass with the stone, right? Or hit the glass and the glass broke down. So the glass received the action of breaking, and that's why we call it direct object or object simply, right? So this object receives the action and it's affected by the action of main verb. We call it object. The second example, I ate an orange. I ate an orange. In this example, I am the subject. I is the subject and ate is our verb. And orange is our object, right? Why do we call it object? Because it is affected by the action of verb. What is the action? Action is eating, right? And the word noun, the noun orange, it functions as an object because it's affected by the action of verb. So a word, we can call it noun, pronoun, or a noun phrase which is affected by the action of verb is called object. I met him. I said that, you know, a noun, an object can be a pronoun as well. An object can be a pronoun as well. In this example, in orange, if you consider both, that is a noun phrase. If you consider simply noun, orange, so orange is a noun and orange is a noun phrase, but I didn't give example for pronouns. So in this example, we have pronoun functions as an object. I met him. So I is the subject, met is a verb, and him is the object. So I said that object can be, it can be a pronoun as well, right? There's a pronoun and functions as an object. Now, one thing it's very important, some objects are called non-affected objects. And why do we call them non-affected object? Because they are not affected by the action of verb. They are not affected by the action of verb. Now, I have some verbs, right? Such as have, possess, suit, fit, and own. These 5 verbs, singular form of have is also used, that is has, right? Have, has, possess, suit, fit, and own. These are verbs which are followed by an object called non-affected object. I have a car. In this example, there is no action. So if there is no action, how can the object be affected? That's why we call it non-affected object. Have shows state. There's no action, so that's why we call it non-affected object, right? Car is our non-affected object in this example. Now, the coat suits you. The coat suits you. In this example, there is no action. We just talk about the present existence or the appearance of the person. So that's why the coat is our subject, suits is a verb, but it doesn't show action. It shows a state. It shows physical appearance of someone, right? And you is our object. So object in this example is also not affected by the verb. We call it non-affected object, right? This is also non-affected object. He owns a company. It's another example. So he owns a company. We just talk about the possession that he has. There is no verb. There is no action. There is a verb, but there is no action, right? So he is our subject. Owns is a verb, but it shows a state. It doesn't show action. So that's why it shows a state, and company is not affected because if a verb doesn't show action, so how can it affect an object, right? That's why we call it non-affected object. So company is our non-affected object. Again, I'm going to tell you that these are 5 verbs. Have, its singular form, has as well. Possess, suit, fit, own, which are followed by non-affected object.